the family of a 12-year-old boy with autism. They say they've been discriminated against after he was asked to leave the theatre for making too much noise. Glyn and Jennifer Morris and their children Gregor and Emily had made the long trip from Milton Brodie in Moray to London to watch Wicked at the Apollo Theatre in Victoria last Friday. But as they sat enjoying the show, having come all the way down from Scotland, a member of staff told them that Gregor had to watch it from behind a glass partition or leave the theatre. The Morris family says Gregor was not making any more noise than any other child would make. Perhaps something similar has happened to you. If so, call us 0500 288 291 or email vine@bbc.co.uk. I'm going to speak to the Joint Chief Executive of the Ambassador Theatre Group, Rosemary Squire, in just a moment. But first, let us talk to Glyn Morris, who is Gregor's father. Hi, Glyn.
Hi, Jeremy, and thanks for letting me come on the show.
Not at all. Good how is the Inverness studio today?
It's great, thanks.
Did you get a nice view there or not?
No, we're enclosed in here, so I have no idea what's happening
It's
outside.
always the way. Well, it's only last Friday evening, all this, wasn't it? And you were visiting London with your family, and take us through it. You booked in to see Wicked.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the highlight of the short stay that we had in London, and we're obviously very excited. Gregor's background is one of full of smiles, very happy, very affectionate, very loving, and it is infectious to anybody that's around about him, as well as anyone who knows him can vouch for that.
And whereabouts were you sitting?
We were sitting in the stalls, 3/4 of the way back up on the left-hand side.
Okay. So show begins?
Show begins. Excellent. Gregor, he really loves theatre. We've never had a problem like this before, and never thought we would encounter this. 15 minutes in, obviously, the front of house manager came down and asked us to take Gregor away because there was a complaint from the sound engineer.
This mysterious sound engineer figure is at the front of the theatre or the back, or what?
He's situated at the back and on the stalls area, right at the back. We did offer at the time as an easy fix solution. My wife Jennifer, she offered to maybe even look for other seats away from it if it was going to be that much of a problem. But unfortunately, they came back and said no, sorry, it's a full house. So the option was to look back from a glass screen, ironically behind the sound engineer's desk. And again, unfortunately, barely I can see over the top of it, let alone a 12-year-old child. So,
sure.
So we were then asked to step up onto the back from the 8-foot kind of sort of corridor width and sit on the stairs to the dress circle, watching through a banister rail and then through the glass screen, which obviously wasn't acceptable.
And what sort of noise, if any, was Gregor making?
Gregor's he's great. He always looks for communications very much. He understands comprehensions, excellently. He uses vowels to communicate. He can't kind of sort of form his words any other way. And he always looks for reassurance, in the conversation from others, and mainly ourselves or who's ever in care of Gregor, to kind of sort of relate that back to him. No more noise than any other. The only thing I could think of was possibly that when Gregor laughs, it's a very hearty laugh. And it's always in context. It's never at the wrong point. It's always when everyone else is laughing and things like that. It's not a shriek or a shrill or anything like that. But he's 12. He's not got the deep voice yet. And obviously I don't know on the aspect of the sound engineer, but whether or not that was the real problem or not.
And your tickets were 270 quid, I gather. So it's already starting to spoil what's quite an expensive occasion.
Do you know this? I mean, it's when you see the look on Gregor and including Emily and all of us. It's an exceptional show, and I'd just like to point out that we in no way are we scarring the name of the cast of Wicked. We absolutely adore them. I think it's right to say. We're not on some sort of vigilante group against the Apollo Theatre Victoria, neither the Ambassador Theatre Group either. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, it's just a kind of sort of dignity thing that, and humiliating thing when you're there and yes, okay, you spend a lot of money, but you would spend any amount of money to see the enjoyment on Gregor's face for that.
And did you then, having decided that the glass partition wasn't going to work, did you then have no options left?
Well, it wouldn't be so bad, the glass partition. I mean, we can cope with that. I mean, we've anything that's thrown at us, no problem at all. Not has ever happened, as I said, in the past. Only recently went down to the Playhouse in Edinburgh, and watched the show Grease, and never a problem, and similar stories as well. So, but the fact was that the viewing from the screen still wasn't accessible for Gregor. So therefore, that we had to sit back up on the stairs to the dress circle, a further 8 foot away from the glass panel, and also to sit sideways and look through the glass panel equally as well.
So you ended up going?
There was no option. We had no option. So it was a case of, and good on Jennifer and Emily, we're not Highland heathens or anything like that, don't get me wrong, but obviously it's a bit of a daunting thought when you've got family out in the centre of London having to fend themselves back across London back to the accommodation and everything as well.
And what's your feeling about the way that Gregor was treated?
I'm very disheartened, and it'd be wrong to say I wasn't angry, but I'm a very level-headed, and we all are as a family unit. Very humble family. I mean, we're not out reading the Riot Act on disability rights or anything like that, and this is not what we're about. We always take 2 steps back to address the situation before we jump in with both feet. So it's just an unfortunate incident that could have been so easily rectified. The unfortunate part was it's taken 5 days for any kind of response back from the Ambassador Theatre Group as well. Communications, absolutely, as you know, is a vital part in any kind of form of solution, and this just didn't happen. Unfortunately, there's been a real kind of sort of dragging the feet around the whole issue. And unfortunately, if they just came away and said, look, we hold, and I thank Rosemary for several calls in the past and now, and saying that they hold their hands up and take full whack for it, and say that we're sorry and everything else, and we'll do extra training and whatnot. That's great, that's terrific. But I think in order to turn around what's a negative out of all of this, to turn it into what would be a great positive, is to, and what I suggested, which was actually agreed in principle, but unfortunately hasn't appeared on the statement, the official statement by ATG, is the fact that we'd like to see an open theatre date next year. I mean, we do realise that the ticket and sales go well into advance, but I'm sure that we could accommodate something to see the production of Wicked, because obviously, as you know, the storyline behind it is very ironic, the whole situation, and fill the theatre with kids, adults, with all forms of additional needs, with carers. Cherry on top of the cake would be using the same sound engineer, which would be delightful. But to not only use it, not classing it as some sort of freebie or anything like that, but it's a good training exercise rather than anything like that.
Let me speak to the person you referred to there, Rosemary Squire, who is Joint Chief Executive of the ATG, the Ambassador Theatre Group. Hello, Rosemary.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, Jeremy.
So, was this just a mistake or what?
I'm very grateful to Glyn and the Morris family for pointing this out to us, because as a company led by me in particular as co-founder and Joint Chief Executive, access to everyone is part of our DNA, to the very heart of our organisation. The only slightly encouraging thing I got from Glyn's comments was that actually we did manage to get it right when his family went to one of our other theatres up in Edinburgh when they went to see Grease. I'm a parent of a disabled child as well. She has learning disabilities and Down syndrome and is 25 now, so she's a young adult with a whole raft of different issues. But I completely empathise with where Glyn is, and we have, as a company, invested a lot of time and money to prioritise access. We have a very senior head of learning and access who has been involved in comprehensive staff training. But I think, in a way, the good thing to come out of this experience is actually it makes people think about what they are doing and actually to understand what the training is about. The key thing that went wrong here, and I think, let's be fair, the sound operator, a young woman, was doing her very best for a high-quality, wonderful production there for 2,000-plus people, to do her job to the best of her ability. She called my staff and said there's a disturbance in the stalls. She didn't know what it was. She heard noise. She thought that somebody was being taken ill. My staff came down. I think they overreacted. not with ill intent. They certainly didn't ask the family to leave. They didn't want the family to leave. But you've got to think of it from Gregor's point of view and from his dad's point of view. It wasn't the right thing to be stood behind this glass screen, nor to be on stairs. You know, I wouldn't
How
like
do you?
it to be
I
on
understand.
stairs.
I understand what you're saying, but there are presumably points at which you decide that somebody is causing too much noise to allow them to stay.
Yeah, I think it's about
This wasn't that
reasonableness.
point, right?
We have to do our very best to give access to as many people as possible. But clearly, you know, you could have a scenario where somebody was absolutely blind drunk and roaring around.
No, I'm talking about as a result
we would
of
ask them to
difficulty,
leave.
disability.
If there was a consistent noise that perhaps somebody with additional needs was calling out involuntary or whatever, that was genuinely disturbing and causing a major disturbance to the audience, then I think you do have to take a view. And generally speaking, most parents and carers are acutely aware of this. You know, that it's not us having to tell them, they know. However, in this circumstance, I think we overreacted, that my staff didn't think about it enough from the point of view of Gregor and his family. We could have found a better solution and not ruin the evening for them, which I deeply regret.
There's a couple of people sort of coming on the lines about this, saying, well, you know, maybe the sound engineer was put off, or could there have been a problem?
She clearly was. She clearly thought there was a disturbance in the stall. She's mortified.
Twitter
now she
from-
understands the situation. She genuinely was doing her job to the best of her ability.
Right. Julia Burrell on Twitter says, if the sound engineer misses a cue, it can be highly dangerous for the cast, especially in Wicked, where there's a lift and a bubble.
Yeah, I completely understand that, and don't get me wrong, we did try and opt for a solution for Gregor's entertainment elsewhere, away from the sound desk. The fact of the matter is, there's not been. We would hold our hands up and say, look, you know, if this was disturbing, if it was that disturbing, we would hold our hands up and say, look, this isn't working. Let's call it a day at this and take him away from the situation. Fact of the matter is, it does seem to be sort of blown completely out of proportion. We don't have any behavioural problems with Gregor. We are extremely grateful and lucky for that. Therefore, as I said, he's a very happy lad and everything else. I see the point coming over from the sound point, you know, that as they put it in their own words at the time, their precious sound engineer, I don't know how they want to respond to that. But the fact of the matter is, what do they do in certain circumstances, like when there is a lot of audience contribution, likes of pantomimes or things like that, where I've seen plenty of lifts and pyrotechnics and everything else used within that, which is crucial to the show. So I'd welcome any response from
Thank
that.
you very much indeed. Let's leave it there because we're getting lots of calls coming in. Glenn Morris, father of Gregor, and Rosemary Squire of the Ambassador Theatre Group. And yeah, do call us 0500 288 291. Don't forget, by the way, after the news at 1, we're discussing how to set up your own B&B. Is it easy?